So welcome back to Third Age Reforged and to another battle replay, and it's actually another battle from the ongoing RP series which is going on the official Discord, another siege which is actually again on one of the standard Medieval 2 settlement types, although this time unlike the multi-layered fortress we have I think this is the city map. But yeah, a little bit more difficult to defend. We have seen this one before, of course. This one offers a lot more places from which the attackers can attack the defenders, obviously a few more angles that they can work with. A lot of places the defenders have to defend if they want to defend the entirety of the outer walls. Also, there are a few less places which are really lethal defensive positions that can be taken up. There is a little bit of raised terrain back here in the town centre which can be defended quite nicely. However, a little bit more difficult to defend than the last fortress we saw. But it is going to be between 3 defenders who are going to be all Cardan armies today and 4 attackers who are going to be all Umbar armies today. So yeah, this very much looks like the sort of place which could be in Cardan. Umbar have certainly marched a long way to get here. But let's go through the Umbar armies first of all. They are the attackers after all, and this one was sent to me actually by Sin of the Dark Cloud. So we'll be going through his army first of all. Umbar probably share most in common with the Western Kingdoms of Men amongst all the Evil Men factions, and that will be even more the case I think in the upcoming 0.97 patch, where Umbar lean even more so into their quality units and they lose a few of their Corsair units to sort of try and really push the fact that they are among the Evil Men, the more quality-centric faction. You know, there's plenty of Evil Men factions like Rudawa, Harad and Khand which can bring a lot of garbage. So Umbar leaning a little bit more into their Black Numenorian heritage rather than their Corsair heritage, although there will still be Corsairs. For example, we do have the Corsair archers here at the front. There will still be a couple of Corsairs that Umbar have access to in the upcoming patch, just so they still do have that lower tier, but they will be much more focused around their upper tier units and mid tier units as well. Also a catapult, which again, unsurprising, there's a lot of flat surfaces on these walls which siege can be used to knock a few holes in, and again that will just increase the amount of attack angles that the attackers will have. We've got some Numenorian Shield Guard. Again, Shield Guard, higher tier spears like this, they can hold for a long time and they are very, very difficult to kill off, but they won't necessarily get you a lot of kills very quickly. I think that, again, that's one of the reasons why I am quite excited for 0.97, the fact that spear units like this will actually be a little bit more worthwhile all round, because they will be much more deadly against Cav. So that'll give them a little bit more of a reason for being. At the moment, the Numenorian Shield Guard, along with a lot of the other more expensive spears, aside from the armor-piercing Gondorian ones, of course, they do tend to struggle a little bit in comparison to sort of bringing a few more units of line infantry. But even so, they will still be difficult for the basic Cardan units to bring down. Crossbow Corsairs, unsurprising to see them, of course, very, very lethal with their stopping power. Very much glass cannons, though. If any of the Cardan archers, God forbid the Rangers, see them, they'll rip right through the Crossbow Corsairs like they weren't even there. But if they can get into a good position, those harpoons loaded into those crossbows will be able to do significant damage to the armoured Cardan legions. Corsair Blackguards, pretty much a similar situation here as well. They are slightly tougher than the Corsair Blackguards at range, but not all that much. They are significantly stronger in melee, however. They pull out a couple of dual short scimitars, so they can look after themselves there, but of course the main attraction is, once again, they use those barbed javelins, which can be very, very lethal. A lot of damage can be dealt off of those. Again, the Castamir's Rangers. In a siege like this, it's unsurprising to see Rangers on the attackers or the defenders' side. And the Castamir's Rangers, of course, can get into a good position and start ripping through the Cardan positions if they aren't spotted first, because of course they can be ripped through quite easily as well. Corsair Blackguards again, and then back here we have a couple of units actually of Corsair Fencers, so very, very damaging. They are multiple HP as well, although once their hit points have been expended, they are almost entirely reliant on their melee skill to keep them alive. Obviously, you know, sustained archer fire is going to be the main worry for the Corsair Fencers in this battle. Got several units of Belagai footmen as well, so the basic spears, of course. Very much showing a bit of a similarity here to the Gondorians with their spearmen. Heavily armoured, you know, decent for holding the line, but they're not necessarily going to get the most kills very quickly. More Corsair archers there, some more Corsair units as well, Corsair pikemen, so it is worth saying Corsair pikemen will be one of the units that are being lost by Umbar in the next patch, but Umbar will be having a pikeman anyway, because the Belagai halberds will be changing into Belagai pikemen, so that is actually a step up in the pike world for Umbar, because obviously the Belagai pikes have got better armour, they're just going to be better all around. They will lose their halberdier, but I actually think that having a pike unit of the Belagai sort of quality for Umbar is going to be a little bit more important than the halberdiers. You know, a faction like Rune often does miss having a pike unit quite a lot because they get outranged an awful lot, and Umbar will have other means with which they can do armor-piercing damage. But for now, the Corsair pikemen are still very much present. Of course, the Narina Iru Sentinels as well, one of the strongest pike units in the game. And then over here, some more Numenor and Shield Guards. So we'll be going through the rest of the Umbar armies a little bit more quickly, I think, because we're probably going to be seeing a lot of the same sort of units. Actually, no Castamir's Legion just yet. We are seeing Engsfits over here, however, with Castamir himself, who's going to be riding with the Warlords of Umbar. If there are gaps that appear inside the settlement and the Warlords of Umbar flood in, that could be pretty devastating if the chaos ensues. That's going to suit Umbar more because they have the more numbers here. And a unit of knights like this are obviously very, very lethal. A catapult, of course. More Balagai footmen. Actually, back here we also have... This is a Corsair unit that Umbar will also be keeping, the Corsair infantry, so they will be having this sort of lower tier line infantry unit. The Corsair infantry, of course, also going to be capable of having their armour upgraded still, because this is the upgraded unit bomb. They have that scale mail that they are wearing. And it makes them a fairly decent frontline combatant. I mean, again, you can tell with 203 men in the unit, they're always going to be on the same sort of level as the equivalent Orc infantry, or Rudauer swordsman might be a good comparison to make to the Corsair infantry. The armour upgrade can help them a little bit as well. Balagai archers, one of the better archers that you can have in a skirmish fight, just because those little bucklers and the good armour that they have make them far more resilient. Not the most damaging archers though, definitely sort of designed to grind the enemy position down rather than rip it to pieces quickly, like the Castamir's Rangers back here. Narina Iru Sentinels as well. Several units of Castamir's Legion, good to see them, obviously a very, very strong line infantry unit. 9 times out of 10, bringing a lot of Castamir's Legion will give you the frontline strength as Umbar. There are a few factions which of course can do better, like Khazad-dûm or Imladris. They are few and far between, you know, and Umbar are definitely one of those infantry powerhouses in the game. Numenorian Shield Guard and Balagai footmen. Meanwhile, moving over here to the third Umbar army, we have Eclipse 2500 of the Dark Cloud. He's got some Corsair Blackguards here on the front, another decent chunk of Castamir's Legion. He's got some Castamir's Rangers, some Narina Iru Royal Guard. They will also be getting a pretty significant change because they will not be a General's Bodyguard unit in 0.97. They will be a standard unit. They will have around 100 men in the unit. They will not be multiple HP, but they will still be that heavily armoured archer and spear hybrid, which actually I think is a good thing for Umbar because it allows them to be used a little bit more freely. But we'll see. I mean, I think that it definitely gives Umbar the ability to just be that skirmish powerhouse. You know, alongside the Balagai archers and the Aprazani Nadu Bawib, it's going to be really very, very difficult to wear Umbar down from range in the future. Even now it's very difficult, and to be honest, even now the Narina Iru Royal Guard are a part of that, but they don't have the most men in the unit, which obviously bodyguard archers, it is a very slow burn with the amount of kills they get. The fact that they're very strong in melee, most of them, is a big draw, but just the fact they have less men in the unit does mean they tend to do less damage over time, or less damage quickly I should say. So Balagai footmen pushing up the ramp. And I think that's just about it. Some more Blackguards on the flank, some Corsair Pikemen and Sentinels. And actually we do have the Harbingers and Castamir, so we've got almost the entirety of the Umbar roster between all the attacking armies here. They will also be getting changed in 0.97. They'll be changing from a dual-wielding unit to a unit that wields a single big sword, so there'll be a heavy swordsman of a similar kind to the Dunedain Captains, the Haven Guard, the Temple Executioners, that sort of thing. It'll be interesting to see where they fit in the pecking order for that, whether they'll be up there with the Temple Executioners and the Noldoran Blade Masters, or whether they'll be not quite up to that sort of standard, but we'll see. And I do think that is right, because at the moment, while they are very skillful with those 2 scimitars, they do struggle a little bit to do a lot of damage quickly, and they do tend to get overwhelmed a little bit too easily for my liking, so it's a good change, I think. And then finally, Rules 1, he's got a catapult, Balagai footmen here on the front line, Balagai archers, a huge mass of Corsairs as well, standard Corsairs actually, so very much the fodder here, acting for Rules. They are exceedingly cheap units, but obviously, again, exceedingly trash as well. They aren't completely free, like Snaga Skirmish, like Snaga Stalkers, I should say, and Orc Fodder. However, they aren't all that much better than that, so it should give you the idea of what they are capable of. Also, no shields means that they can be ripped apart by archers, but it won't be the worst thing in the world for Umbar if they do end up absorbing a little bit of arrow fire for them, some Corsair Fencers, and then some Numenorian units at the back, the Narina Iru Sentinels and the Shield Guard. So, now we shall move on to the Defenders, who of course Cardan. There are 3 armies, one played by Inarius. I think, let's have a look where the others are. Von Mountain also playing as a Cardan army, and Arsal playing as the 3rd one. So, let's have a quick cursory glance over all the Cardan forces. Of course, Dunedain Captains are very strong, heavy swordsmen, without the armour upgrade in this case, but still very, very powerful. Only the best of the Umbar units can go toe-to-toe with them. Similar sort of story here with the Tharbad Warhammers, and they're in a very good situation for themselves as well, because Umbar, a lot of their units are pretty heavily armoured. You know, and the ones that aren't do tend to be their lower quality units anyway, which the Tharbad Warhammers will easily be able to beat most Corsairs. The Fencers being the one exception to that rule, they're the one that they'll want to avoid. But everything else, the Tharbad Warhammers will be capable of dishing out a pretty hefty amount of damage to pretty quickly. Greenwatch Garrison Footmen are going to be a very important part of the defence here. Cheap pikes like this are going to need to hold the Umbar legions in place while other Cardan units do the damage. Some Greenwatch Garrison Spearmen again, very much a tar pit at range and fodder in melee really. They do very low damage in melee. Wardens of Tir Gorthad, another important part of the Cardan army, just to make sure that morale stays high. Nearby obviously with their encouragement aura. Miniska Rithlin Swordsmen as well, sort of the standard men-at-arms unit that Cardan have available to them. Stronger than the Corsair infantry of Umbar, significantly stronger, but noticeably weaker than the Castamir's Legion. So very much in the middle of those two units there. More Greenwatch Garrison Footmen, some Greenwatch Garrison Archers up on the walls, of course, some cheap archers indeed, but they do have a good position, and obviously they will be... They're so cheap that even Umbar might not want to skirmish with them, to be honest with you. Erin Vaughan Axemen, again, more armour piercing. Unlike the Tharbad Warhammers, of course, much cheaper, you know, and their low defensive skill, and they don't have a lot of staying power in melee. They will tend to die off pretty quickly. But the AP could still be useful against the right targets. If they get committed against the Corsairs, that's a bit of a waste. We've got some more Tharbad Warhammers over here. Again, looks like a very similar setup here of a lot of pikes, a lot of cheap spears. Again, they will... I think how Cardan use their damage dealers here is going to be key, because they can hold the enemy in place for quite a long time with all these pikes and cheap spears. But they will not be able to win the battle based on that alone. Minotaur Roman Guardians, of course, crossbows are going to be one of the keys here for Cardan as well. If they can get into a good position, they'll be able to tear their way through big chunks of the Umbar army. Dunedain Captains with the armour upgrade this time, with their plate armour. I do like the plated up Dunedain Captains, fully ready for battle. Wardens of Tir Gorthad over here as well. Miniska Rithlin Sharpshooters, of course, AP in melee as well as dealing damage with those crossbows at range. Gwathlo Trackers, they are rangers in every sense other than the body piercing, which is the most important thing for rangers, of course. They can hide, you know, they have that light armour which you associate with rangers, but they're not body piercing. So the Gwathlo Trackers, they earn the title of Ghetto Rangers, as I keep calling them. Miniska Rithlin Archers, heavily armoured archers. Hearthguard of Amon Sul, of course, very much the equivalent to the Naruna Aru Royal Guard, at least as it stands in 0.97. Of course, they'll be sort of going down their own paths. Dunedain Rangers is going to be an exceptionally important part of the Cardan defence. Miniska Rithlin Archers as well. And then back here in the centre of their defence, we have the Hearthguard of Amon Sul, more crossbows in the Minotaur Roman Guardians, a lot of pikemen, more Minotaur Roman Guardians, a couple of trebuchets, which again can be a bit wild with how inaccurate trebuchets can be, but if they get some good hits, huge amount of splash damage that they can do. More Minotaur Roman Guardians, a lot more spearmen, more rangers, more sharpshooters as well, more Dunedain Rangers, some more sharpshooters. Over here we've got a lot more archers as well, so a huge ranged contingent for Cardan, which they will need to use to its fullest effect, otherwise they're going to be in real trouble. If it turns into an infantry-based slog, there's only going to be one winner between Cardan and Umbar, and it's going to be the men on the outside of the walls at the start. So, without further ado, let's begin. And I would still give the advantage here to Umbar. Like, defenders, they are outnumbered, and also this is a difficult fortress to defend. I don't think morale is going to be as big a problem for Cardan as it would otherwise be, because they are all bottled up a little bit, and there should be morale buffing units nearby to every defence that they're going for. Meanwhile, the trebuchet already firing. I'm not sure whether that was just because they were stuck on fire at will or not. I think actually though, because based on the fact we're probably going to be seeing... we can actually see, yeah, immediately. I mean, I'm surprised actually the Minotaur Roman Guardians even started up on the walls. Risking losing half a unit of them by starting them up on the walls and the catapult immediately starting to tear them down was always going to be a bit of a worry. But obviously the first thing in this battle is going to be the bombardment. Those trebuchets are still firing actually, which I am very surprised about. I'm not sure whether they're trying to maybe snipe out the general, but I would... No, they can't be sniping out the general. I mean, they're getting awfully close actually to the catapult, but it's not really worth their time to... Of course, infantry there. It's not really worth the trebuchet's time to try and snipe out the catapult at this distance. The trebuchet is never really going to be able to do that. They're so inaccurate at that sort of range, at least in firing at a target that small. And the trebuchet could be one of those things which you really want to save until the late game, to be honest with you. Meanwhile, you can see that the tower's being destroyed, of course. Towers could be one of those things which do... Those kills could add up over time. And there are a lot of towers here. Von Mountain is the one using his trebuchet. I'm a little bit surprised he is doing this, because, I mean, he's really hit nothing at the moment. And a trebuchet can be such a useful tool. Like, later on in the battle, when the fight is getting closer to the town centre and there's a blob about 5 feet away, they'll be really wishing they had some more trebuchet ammunition. Because at the moment they're sort of impotently shooting around Engswitz's army. And even if they do hit, I mean, most of these units are in loops. I mean, yeah, they got a very grazing hit there, but a trebuchet costs an awful lot of money. Just getting grazing, glancing blows on Balagai footmen and Corsair infantry is not what you want from such a potentially devastating siege engine. Cardan, meanwhile, sort of still just moving around. We're still very much in the initial phases of this fight, after all. Yeah, I think this is a waste at this point. I mean, just a couple of warning volleys to give Engswitz something to think about is one thing, but at this point I think Von Mountain has wasted far too much of his trebuchet ammunition. Considering the situation Cardan find themselves in, outnumbered, and from an infantry standpoint outgunned, they need everything. They need all of their ranged units to really be pulling their weight, and that trebuchet most certainly isn't by just shooting wildly into Engswitz's army when it's that far away. Meanwhile, more sections of the fortress crumbling, and over here these Balagai footmen are pushing up the ram already. That ram, however, I mean, it could be destroyed here. I mean, you can see that those towers really are laying into it, and there have been times previously where rams like this have been destroyed before they even reach the gate by towers like this. You see the Balagai footmen are taking a few losses. I mean, the towers are not quite as deadly as they would be on higher fortress levels, I'm sure. We've all had nightmares about how Medieval 3's highest level fortresses with those cannons work. Like, Jesus. Even the ballistas on level 2 were fairly out of control. Meanwhile, the Corsair infantry, Engswitz's army, still content to just sort of wait there. Meniskirithlan archers getting up on the walls here. This tower also being taken out by Sin. So a much safer assault on this side, only one tower still remaining. That trebuchet is still firing away and still it's wasting its ammunition. And also over here now, it gets worse because Inarius is also using his trebuchet now. Again, I fail to see the point behind this. I mean, it's over here you can see the attackers doing all the right things, because they're, even if one of these trebuchet shots does hit, which to be quite frankly is unlikely with how far away they are, they're in loose formation. The amount of damage it's going to do is minimal. Unless they get insanely lucky and snipe out a general, but even then, Umbar are not a faction which struggle with morale overly. With their higher tier units, a lot of it is lock morale.
Excellent! We have breached our enemy's walls.
Another section of wall goes down. Balagai footmen still taking out the gates, and they will be able to do so. So in this case, the ram is not going to be destroyed. Still, the trebuchet shots arcing through the air. It hurts my soul to see these trebuchets just... It's a waste of ammunition, really. It really is.
Our men have done well. The gates have fallen.
Blindly shot into the enemy. This is good news for the attackers, because the trebuchets, both of those trebuchets could have been really, really dangerous sort of later on when the blob started to form within the settlement, but this is not something now which they're going to have to be overly concerned with. A lot of the ammunition is going to be gone. Umbar going to be able to engage a little more freely. Of course, there are still other things which they're going to have to be on the lookout for. Cardan's crossbows and rangers still very much in effect, and Cardan still have a fair amount of standard archers as well, but I don't know, man. Trebuchets can be such a potent tool. Meanwhile, what have we got going on over here? D9 captains, we've got rules over here. Corsairs pushing up the towers. We've also got a unit of Balagai archers in here as well. Firing into, I believe, the town centre. I mean, there's a lot of juicy targets in the town centre the Balagai archers can start poking away at. However, there are these Greenwatch garrison archers right up on the walls here as well. What are they doing? I know they're firing their fire arrows, but what are they actually firing at? More sections of wall crumbling. They're going after the catapult? I mean, I guess they are. You can see how inaccurate they are, though. Sort of falling like snowflakes in a wide area. But I don't think Rules is going to be too concerned. I mean, his catapult crew has retreated. These Balagai archers still just sort of poking and prodding as well, still very much in the initial phases of the battle here. Rules has got that siege tower in position as well. Corsairs ready to sort of mount it on the wall, but if they do, they're not going to make it too far. Minister and Swordsman will easily be able to deal with Corsairs, especially when they've got the assistance of those fortifications nearby. Nearby there's also a few more units of infantry, but you can see now that Eclipse 2500 of the Dark Cloud is starting to flood forwards. Again, for a siege of this size, 25k frames is not a complete marathon. It's still obviously a battle of decent size, but I would imagine when Umbar come forward they will do so in substantial numbers. Belagai footmen getting close to the walls. Already with how many gaps there are over here, Cardan have elected to sort of abandon this corner of the fortress, just sort of hold the streets instead. Very understandable. Still those trebuchets are sort of firing wildly into Engspitz's advancing army. Considering the amount of rocks he's had flung at his army so far, Engspitz has not really had a lot of damage done to him. While Rules pouring in through, I think, the only gap which has been made on this side of the settlement, but again, they don't necessarily need to make gaps in every section of wall to be successful here, Umbar. But already very close to the town centre, all things considered. Another section of wall crumbles. This is the good thing about bringing a catapult in every one of the attacking armies. Umbar is very free to start tearing apart the fortress brick by brick. While these Corsairs allowing the Balagai archers to get into a good firing position. Very much a wet noodle contest here between the Corsairs and the Greenwatch Garrison Spearmen, although I might give this one to the Corsairs. The Greenwatch Garrison Spearmen are very impotent in melee. I think they have 1 damage. Well, at least 1-to-1 I would give this to the Greenwatch Garrison Spearmen. Not like this. Not when they're being surrounded and not when they're taking shots in the back from the towers. Just about the Balagai footmen stopping the advance of the Greenwatch Garrison Spearmen into the Balagai archers. But now the fight is starting to begin on pretty much all fronts, it seems. Indeed, we can see Eclipse 2500 also starting to advance into the gaps that he has made. Greenwatch Garrison Spearmen holding the front line, but only a unit of Greenwatch Garrison footmen. They need some backup, I think, otherwise they're going to be forced out the way by the spearmen in shield wall. Similar story over here, a combination of the Balagai footmen and the Corsair pikemen coming in. I don't know, I think maybe Cardan, Umbar coming forward in a very aggressive manner now. I mean, Cardan have had plenty of time to prepare for this assault. It's not like they've been blitzed right from the off and they've been rushed.
Give grace to God. We have captured the enemy's walls.
Wardens of Tir Gorthad coming in, so a lot of pikes, a lot of spears in here as well. Still those cheap archers as Eclipse starts to put pressure on every flank, and that's all the attackers need to do here, I think, to really put themselves in a commanding position. Although Engspitz and Sin a little bit more cautious on the approach. So far it's just Rules and Eclipse to have moved in a really aggressive fashion. Well, what's going on here? There's a Miniscarithan sharpshooters firing into the advance of Rules' army, which is definitely needed because it's only a single unit of Greenwatch Garrison Spearmen which is holding back the Balagai hordes here. Those crossbow bolts are going to be very, very necessary. Meanwhile, over here you can see that these Corsairs have routed and broken a combination of civilians and Greenwatch Garrison Spearmen in melee, causing them to break, as well as, of course, all of the ranged units. Those Greenwatch Garrison archers are in a very nice position as well. So it is a bit of a punishing advance here for Rules as he continues to try and move forwards. Well, Miniscarithan swordsmen still moving around. It's over here where I would be a little bit concerned. See those trebuchet shots still falling in the background. The Tharvad Warhammers will be able to do a lot of damage to these Umbar spearmen. Obviously, armour very much a big focus for Umbar. Oh, hello. Those are risky shots to be making. A bit of friendly fire would not be good for Cardan at all. Tharvad Warhammers, though, of course, one of the strongest armour-piercing infantry units in the game. They'll be able to do a good job for now, but they can't be everywhere along this line, and that would be my concern here. As long as they can buckle those pike units from Cardan, the Greenwatch Garrison Spearmen are not going to be able to offer a huge amount of resistance in prolonged melee. Oof. That's not great there. Eclipse 2500 getting a point-blank shot into the Greenwatch Garrison Spearmen, convincing the Cardan forces to move aside. This Greenwatch Garrison Archers have taken an awful lot of damage. I'm wondering what that's from. Wards of Tir Gorthad are over here though, so they will have the encouragement aura in effect. Meanwhile, there's a bit of engagement going on around here. I mean, Von Mountain, this unit of spears in Skiltron, maybe being thrown under the bus a little bit, because they're now going to be surrounded by a couple of units of Balagai footmen, and I think this is more just to try and blob up some units so they can get some shots off, but I'm not really sure. Fire arrows for me, not really all that worthwhile against Umbar. You're very unlikely to break them, especially not at this point in the battle. Meanwhile, a few units getting ready to come in over here, but there's still a lot of Cardan forces to fight their way through. I think Umbar have had a decent first half to the battle, pretty much. But Cardan can certainly still fight their way back into this. Rangers and crossbows can be so lethal if Umbar find themselves at the mercy of the Cardan skirmishers for too long. This is a fight which could definitely go in Cardan's favour. The Dunedain captains have now also joined the front line. That's the telltale whistle of crossbows. The Miniscarithan sharpshooters shooting into Eclipse's army as they advance forward. The Dunedain captains joining the front line as well is not the best thing for him. Cardan able to hold for now, but they have had to commit forward elite units already. Meanwhile, oh, that's a lethal shot right down along those pikes. Absolutely devastated. Very, very nice use of the catapult there from Eclipse 2500, and all of a sudden,
By the grace of God, our siege towers are at the walls. Our enemies know where to fight now.
all of a sudden, this fight that was looking... Umbar would have broken through eventually, but they're going to break through far sooner than they would have done now. And even the Wards of Tir Gorthad disorientated. Of course, their blackguards coming in. Some Greenwatch Garrison Archers up on the walls over there. But all of a sudden, this section of the city now is surrounded. Eclipse is going to be able to send some units over there. And if Engsvitz so desires, he can send some units down here as well. So it's good stuff here for the attackers. Certainly doing some good work. There's also the Harbingers of Castamere taking on the role of vanguard here, getting into close quarters with the Greenwatch Garrison footmen and the Erinvorn X-Men, two units which are going to really struggle against the skill which the Harbingers of Castamere bring to the table. Castamere's Legion backing them up as well, although the Harbingers are now going to cycle out, maybe not too eager to have themselves poked down. Ooh, and there goes a catapult. Finally, the trebuchets do get a lucky hit from distance on one of the enemy siege equipment. Balagai footmen and Castamere's Legion at this point pretty depleted, and the Dunedain captains are going to be able to hold. There's still more Cardan bolts and arrows flowing into their positions. The Tharbad Warhammer still holding down the front line, but it's going to be a question of numbers here. Miniscarithan and Swordsman joining in. Let's see what Rules is doing. I mean, Rules is already fairly close to the enemy town centre, and it's only really civilians and Greenwatch Garrison Spearmen that are holding him back. And I think, yeah, I mean, Rules is coming forward in numbers here, and so he should. I mean, if they aren't committing forward anything of genuine quality to stop him, why not? Miniscarithan sharpshooters out of ammunition potentially, being committed to melee. A lot of armour piercing up here between the Axemen and the Maceman.
The enemy are badly bloody. They have lost half their men.
Yeah. And there's Corsair Fencers on the front line here as well, so it's possible that Rules' army will run out of steam, but he's definitely going to be causing quite a little bit of panic here, because I mean there's going to be more reinforcements needed, and again it falls to Greenwatch Garrison's Spearmen to try and do that. You can see there's Wards of Tir Gorthad running for the hills. It's never a good sign if you're Cardan when one of your morale buffing units, one of the pillars of your line, is running away with not very many men left. Of course, their pikemen are here as well. Defeat almost a certainty as the Dunedain captains manage to gain some sort of victory over here. And there's burning siege equipment over here as well. The catapult was used to good effect already by Eclipse, of course, destroying several sections of wall, but this is where the towers really come into their own, because it will be the towers, I think, which have set fire to the Umbar siege equipment. Excuse me. Meanwhile, up on these walls, you can see that Engsvitz pulling up a ladder, and his Corsair infantry getting up here as well. Erinvorn Axemen have taken some damage already. And of course their staying power in melee is just not really there. While they will be able to do some decent damage to the armoured up Corsair infantry, the Corsair infantry will be able to outlast them in this fight, I think. More Corsair infantry coming in over here as well, so surrounded at this point. Some more Corsair infantry, the pikes also. So doing a very good job at isolating little pockets of Cardan resistance and then overwhelming them here on Bar. Very, very nicely handled siege so far. And while the Cardan forces on this stables, you can hear pigs in those stables actually. But you can see here, just to stare down, the Cardan forces can't afford to abandon these roads. What have we got going on over here? Sin trying to get his catapult into position to do some point-blank shots. He's also got his archers up on the walls. Of course, one of the downsides to having to abandon this corner of the fortress is the fact that Umbar can now use the fortifications in the high ground against Cardan. It's only Corsair archers and, of course, Greenwatch garrison spearmen. Their primary goal in life, really, is to absorb arrow fire. They have a decent shield value, if nothing else. But still not ideal for Cardan. The Miniscarithan archers are also over here. I'm sure the Miniscarithan archers would prefer to be shooting at something a little bit more substantial than the catapult crew or the Corsair archers. And they're doing a lot of damage. They could actually destroy that catapult before it gets anything significant done. Meanwhile, the trebuchet hitting primarily the buildings of their own town. Corsair infantry here, still on the front line, and it's only a matter of time before these pikemen break. They're well behind enemy lines. Victory seems certain. Harbingers of Castamere and the Corsair... Actually, no, those are just the Corsair Blackguards. Chewing through the Greenwatch garrison archers. Systematically destroying the outer defences here, really, Umbar. I feel as though the defenders didn't really have a concrete plan in place. I feel as though it was a very wishy-washy outer defence they had going on. They had some elite units, but they didn't really fully commit to the outer defences. And they're really being made to pay for that here. I think you need to either have a skeleton crew on the outer defences and then pull back when the enemy have sort of poked a few holes in the walls, used a lot of their siege equipment, and then sort of defend a more solid point like here at the back. Or you need to fully commit to the outer defences. None of this in-between stuff, because it never works, and I think that's what Cardan are really starting to notice here. They've committed a decent amount of forces to their outer defence, but not enough to stop Umbar's advance. Really, only Rules has not really made much progress so far, but that's only because he's right next to the town centre, and there was always going to be a lot of units here ready to be committed. And all Rules needs to do is keep up his assault, and elsewhere in the settlement the other three armies are going to make progress. You can see over here, look, Eclipse has made it almost to the same point as Rules now. And with those reinforcements, of course, a lot more trouble is going to be on the way. I mean, Dunedain Rangers are over here, but you can see they have taken losses, so the Umbar players aren't daft. They know where the Rangers are. If you can kill off the Rangers, you're always going to be in a good place. The Rangers will be able to get a decent amount of kills in return, however. Oof. Hits there on the Miniscarithan sharpshooters. The Rangers trying to do a lot of close range damage here to Eclipse's army, and they're succeeding. But the problem that Cardan are having here, though, is that they're having to sort of defend so many roads. Engspitz is now coming forward with a large force as well. A combination of Belagai footmen and Corsair infantry. Nothing too special in this army, but again, coming forward in force. More catapult shots down there as well. That was a very fortunate shot as well, right into the centre of that Cardan defence. I have to say, these trebuchets, surprised they still have ammunition actually, but they've also done quite a lot of damage to their own settlement. Meanwhile, you can see that Sin is now also committing forward a lot of his forces, and a response was needed. Some Tharbad Warhammers came down here from Arsal, as well as the Wardens of Tir Gorthad, but for me, the problem is going to be eventually Cardan are just not going to have enough left. We've got here Belagai footmen also moving across in a dense formation, so once again you can see coming in from the side. Again, from multiple angles, Cardan are being hit. The crossbows and the Rangers are going to have to do a lot of damage here for Cardan. If they can do a lot of damage quickly, then they can still turn this around. See there, Belagai archers up on the walls. Warlords of Umbar now running through the settlement. A lot of damage done throughout the town. Meanwhile, a single member of the Tharbad Warhammers, another section of wall falls. That is near the town centre as well, so that to me says that Rules is now ready to commit forward some more men elsewhere, although he doesn't have the most men left to him. We watch garrison footmen charging outside the walls. Those Castlemar's Rangers have taken a huge amount of damage. Again, anyone who starts nearest to the town centre on the attack is always going to take the most damage, so that was always going to be the case for Rules, but he has still done his job very, very well. Cardan are now starting to come forward and are actually starting to put a lot of pressure on him, so at this point Rules needs to survive and buy more time for his allies to advance yet further into the settlement. Now an Ira Royal Guard trying to shoot at point blank. It's a very battered and bruised force that Eclipse 2500 has managed to get forward at this point. Still, Cardan's ranged forces trying to pour as much damage into the Umbar positions as they can. Miniscarithan sharpshooters, they need to not get engaged in melee. There go the Balagaya footmen. That's what I was waiting to see. I mean, if the trebuchets still had full ammunition at this point in the battle, Cardan could be in a very good place, but they've already used so much of their trebuchet ammunition. Look at all these blobs that they could shoot into. Prime real estate for the trebuchets. Warns of Tir Gorthad, meanwhile, alongside the upgraded Dunedain captains. Some of the best troops that Cardan can feel holding back Sin's attacking force that's heading towards the town centre. Of course, our blackguards in position, reloading. Some Tharbad Warhammers over here as well. I mean, Umbar may be stalling a little bit. However, I can't help but notice there are the heavy knights from Umbar, the warlords, charging around and getting some nice rear charges here. Of course, knights on the charge are so lethal. Whether they have the room to get a really nice charge in these cramped conditions is debatable, but they are going to be able to muck up Cardan's defence a little bit, which, again, is going to be something that Cardan have to contend with. Miniscarithan archers taking a partial charge there. They're not really going to be able to defend themselves in melee against the warlords either. If that had been the sharpshooters with their AP maces, maybe the warlords would think twice before getting involved with that. Meanwhile, completely overrunning this defence over here, and those sharpshooters, they still have their crossbows out, which means they still had ammunition, so that's a grievous loss for Cardan to suffer as Umbar continue to swamp over the outer Cardan defences. You can see over here as well, really the story of this battle has been individual units like this and those, not macemen, crossbows, well they are macemen technically. You can see that they've individually been isolated and then surrounded and overwhelmed by Umbar, and that's something they've done really very, very well in this battle so far, and Cardan have not really been able to deal with that. I feel as though they've been a little bit knee-jerk with how they've defended individual choke points. They've not had as much of a plan in place as they could have. And now with the warlords back here as well, not the best charge though, they definitely want to get out of there. The Minotaur Roman Guardians will inflict a fairly hefty amount of damage on them. Miniscarithan sharpshooters over here. Dunedain captains actually counter-attacking outside the walls, which again is kind of suicidal because Rules still has enough left to certainly do enough damage to them. I mean, they've got some crossbows outside the walls as well, a couple of units of Minotaur Roman Guardians. But now the warlords are going to be able to come out onto the open field. And the knights on an open field are going to be very, very lethal indeed. Charging uphill. Bumping up against the Minotaur Roman Guardians, but shaken. Not the best charge, they still had their swords out, they didn't get their lances down. But even so, that's a lot of Cardan resources that they've got out here, out on the open field, trying to finish off Rules, but for Rules this is perfect. You know, if he can throw himself under the bus so that the other three can just overwhelm the position inside, he'll take it. And that's the problem Cardan have. Cardan need everything back here at this point. I mean, the Minotaur Roman Guardians are doing their best trying to hold the line here against the ever-advancing Umbar forces. There are the Ira Royal Guard trying to shoot in here. There's Guathlo trackers pulling out their hand axes. Again, you can see the Hearthguard of Amon Sul just being overwhelmed once again, swamped. The reinforcements lagging a little bit too far behind, and there goes the general. Inarius' general falling by the wayside. Sin Still being held in place over here for now, but once again, it's only a matter of time before his superior numbers do manage to crack through the defence. And again, just not enough range support over here. Seems like there wasn't quite enough support in any engagement for Cardan. It seems like they had enough to sort of give Umbar pause everywhere, but not enough to outright stop them. And I feel as though that, again, that is going to be what causes their downfall in the end. Meanwhile, out here, this is where the Knights really come into their own. Charging outside the walls when the enemy have brought a unit of Warlords of Umbar. You can see that when the Knights do get a good charge off, even against an anti-cavalry unit like the Minotaur Roman Guardians, the Warlords have paid the price for charging into them, but ultimately a lot of casualties have been inflicted. Miniscarithan sharpshooters are out here as well, but they're being dealt with by sentinels and by fencers. The Dunedain captains have been destroyed, so even this expeditionary force, which was looking like it was in a good place, supported by those crossbows, is now being systematically destroyed. Not great news for Cardan there. Warlords of Umbar getting in here as well. Shaken now, the Minotaur Roman Guardians. The Hearthguard of Amon-Sul facing off against the Naira and Naira Sentinels just within the walls. And you can see that there are a few Umbar units that are starting to sneak into the town centre, which is bad news for Cardan. It's a sign that their front lines are falling apart. You can see coming forward now yet more Umbar forces. Belagar footmen, Castamir's legion pouring forwards. Miniscarithan sharpshooters that still have ammunition, but unfortunately for them, they're not going to have the opportunity to use that because they're going to be needed as infantry here. They'll pull out their maces and have to fight off against the Black Numenorians. Numenorian Shield Guard with the red cloaks, of course, from Umbar. The green cloaks from Mordor, and I think Numenor in 0.97, the sort of Numenor units like that will have like a blue cloak. Well, the Naira and Naira Royal Guard defeat seems certain. Only a military genius could win this battle. I mean, the Minotaur Roman Guardians holding down this choke point like champions, but you would also say that not a huge amount of resources have been committed. There's more Corsairs ready to be committed as well. Some Greenwich Garrison archers up there, but unimportant to Umbar's goals. They're just going to ignore them. The Naira and Naira Sentinels getting in here.
It is unwise to praise the day before sunset, but our men are winning the battle and forging a worthy victory.
Yep, 10% ahead. And I can only imagine that that gap is going to grow slightly, because Umbar are now starting to charge through the defences, as they have done for large sections of this battle. The Cardan defences have just not been substantial enough. Too many pockets of resistance, not really a unified wall from Cardan. I feel as though that's been their downfall here. Again, maybe a little bit too much waste in how they use their ammunition as well from their trebuchets. They could have been really, really potent tools here in the late game, because Umbar were always going to have to blob up to take the town centre, and that was where the trebuchets could have been at their most deadly. You can see though Umbar charging forwards like a swarm of ants over their hill, charging into what little remains of the Cardan defenders here in their town centre. Their fortress is going to fall here. That much is fairly clear at this point. The question now is some Warlords back here as well. The Warlords have definitely taken a lot of casualties. I can't imagine that Engsford's General is going to survive this battle, actually. He's now in and amongst another unit of Minotaur Roman Guardians. And I think this was a winnable battle from Cardan. They had all the tools they needed. They had a ton of crossbows, they had rangers, they had two very potent siege engines, and they had a lot of units capable of holding the line for a long time. But I just feel as though the way they laid out their defence was just not how it should have been done.
Praise to our Lord. Our men
Too many half measures.
the enemy general. Now his men will lose heart.
Umbar deserve a lot of credit for how they isolated pockets of the defence and destroyed them as well, but I don't know, I feel as though in a siege battle like this as Cardan, you got to see that sort of thing coming. You got to notice when you're being bamboozled. And bamboozled Cardan most certainly have been. Very, very nice siege assault here from Umbar. Few Hearthguard of Amon-Sul left standing. Minotaur Roman Guardians pulling out their halberds to assist in melee. there's not much fight left in Cardan at this point, you would imagine. Just a slew of Umbar forces pouring in now. Still a few Miniscarithan archers up on those walls. At this point, I don't think Cardan are going to be able to retake that. So again, they just pour forward the inexorable advance of Umbar. Again, very much a heavy metal infantry faction are Umbar, and they've certainly proven their strengths in that area in this battle today. Cardan, with their cheap pikes and spears, are often able to hold enemy factions in line for quite some time, and I do think that they could have been able to do so if they had organised themselves a little better here, Cardan. But Umbar very much making use of their own strengths. Meanwhile, Miniscarithan archers, we've seen quite a lot of Cardan lately, we've seen quite a lot of Cardan being successful. So they're going to have to take the L this time. I think those Miniscarithan archers just ran out of ammunition, pulling out their arming swords and shields. Another warlord of Umbar falls by the wayside, but not before killing off a couple more Minotaur Romen Guardians. Who probably have been the single most impressive Cardan unit. They've managed to do a lot of damage at range and hold down a few choke points for quite a long time, but ultimately all of the MVPs will belong to Umbar in this battle. Hard to pick out single units which really did that. Really, I just think that the synergy between Umbar, the players and the armies that they brought, was very, very good.
Our enemy has lost his stomach to fight. We must push our advantage.
Because again, there's a lot of diversity in the Umbar armies as well. They brought a lot of different units. Like you can see here that Sin brought a lot of Corsair fencers. Other armies got a lot of the Castamir's Legion. The only units we haven't really seen from Umbar in this case are the Abrazani. None of the Abrazani units actually. The Nardutari, the Narduzagar, and the Nardubawi were not here. There goes another general.
Our men have captured the enemy general. Guard him well. Give the dog some wine, and be sure he can see us defeat the rest of his army.
Castamir's Legion is celebrating. Is there really anything left at this point? I think so. Possibly. Who is left? Back down here? Ah, there we go. Admitting defeat. Well, I mean, you know, within around about 15%. But obviously, Umbar, very, very good in that situation. I think they assaulted the castle in pretty much every way you would want. I think, you know, the Cardan forces, very mixed fortunes for them. You can see Von Mountain got a lot of kills. I would imagine that a lot of that comes down to crossbows and rangers. But Cardan just in general struggled to hold individual sections. I feel as though they either should have gone for a skeleton crew on the outer walls and then fell back a little bit more readily to the areas around the town centre, a little bit more of a manageable area, or they should have fully committed to the outer defences. One or the other. As it was, they went for a sort of in-between approach, and Umbar were able to systematically destroy every defence they laid on. Very, very good from Umbar, though. Let's have a look what did the damage for each of the Umbar armies. So for Engsfit, the MVP for him was, I think, Castamir's Legion. Yeah, 198 kills on Castamir's Legion. Unsurprising to see the infantry really come to the fore here, because again, that sort of heavy metal approach that they went for here really did pay dividends. As for Sin of the Dark Cloud, 286 on Castamir's Rangers. Rangers, of course, in a siege situation like this are always going to get a decent amount of kills if you can get them into the right positions. And Balagai Footman got over 200 kills as well, just to show how the infantry performed here. Rules, 267 on Numenorian Shield Guard. So as much as I sort of decried them in the earlier section, sort of expensive spears not really being super powerful, the spears have done pretty well for themselves in this battle, it must be said. Numenorian Shield Guard there. Also 200 kills on Balagai Footman as well. So for rules, the spears performed very well. Corsair Blackguards, the MVP for Eclipse. So obviously the javelins, and then also getting into melee as well. Very, very potent indeed with those dual scimitars. 236 on the Rangers as well, though. The Blackguards managing to just outperform them, though. So yeah, I feel as though Umbar utilising their strengths very well. The players all playing very well together. Obviously, dealing very well with the defences. Cardan, there are a few things they could have done. The trebuchets, as much as I was complaining about that in the early stages, the more important thing was definitely to have a little bit more of a solid plan in place before the battle. As it was, I feel as though they just sort of, they put up token defences too much, and Umbar, it was like bowling for them, knocking over Skittles, and yeah, I feel as though Cardan, they should have had either their full might on the outer walls, or their full might sort of a little bit more concentrated around their town centre, in addition to using their trebuchet ammo a little bit more sparingly. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. Obviously, I'm always a big fan of these RP battles. I like having the unified factions to sort of fight against one another, just because on a large scale like this, it really lets you know what the strengths of the faction are. We definitely saw Umbar's infantry power come to the fore here. We didn't quite see Cardan's crossbows and rangers used to their fullest effects. They could have won this based on that alone. But yeah, we've seen Cardan do quite well recently, so it's only right that they now suffer a little bit at the hands of an evil faction. And I have noticed that recently a lot of people, well, some people have been saying, well, the evil factions are losing an awful lot lately. Well, here you go. Umbar able to defeat Cardan, and Cardan had all the tools to make life very uncomfortable for them here. Rangers, crossbows, a lot of archers, trebuchets, a lot of pikemen to hold them in place. But ultimately, Umbar did very, very well. So, big thank you to Sin for sending this one for me. Hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you will join me for whatever is next, which is probably going to be a fight on the Barrow Downs. But of course, we are moving inexorably closer to the release of 0.97, and of course, with 0.97 will come a faction updates for all of the factions that exist in the game currently, and of course, there will be a few new factions being added as well. I think 4 in total, which of course we'll be going through as well. So I'll be making a little bit of a return to that style of video. I might start doing the top 10s again as well. Although the game has grown into something where top 10s are a little bit more difficult to do now, because it was in the old days when I did the top 10s, it was quite cut and dry how I was able to sort them. Now it's significantly more complicated. I might do them. It might be top 5s even. I don't know. We'll see. But we will be making a sort of a return to that style of video when 0.97 releases. So yeah. Hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join me for that when 0.97 drops.